He was supposed to be untouchable, not just in Hollywood but in the entire world. For decades, people stopped debating whether Chuck Norris could be beaten. They already knew the answer. He wasn't just a movie star. He was a symbol, a force of nature wrapped in denim and discipline. The man who turned toughness into a personality and made the whole world believe he wasn't even human. But one morning in 2017, that image shattered. A story hit the internet and spread like wildfire. Within hours, millions of people had seen it. Forums exploded. Social media erupted. And for the first time in his entire career, Chuck Norris wasn't trending because of a film. He wasn't trending because of a meme or a joke. He was trending because people genuinely believed he was dying. His wife Gina appeared in front of cameras looking nothing like the composed woman the public was used to seeing. She was visibly shaken, exhausted, emotional in a way that couldn't be faked. And she wasn't there to promote anything. She wasn't reading from a press release. She was speaking through tears about hospital rooms, about desperate doctors, about watching the man she loved fight something that no amount of strength could stop. The man who had survived movie explosions, decades of Hollywood pressure, and roundhouse kicks on screen was now battling something invisible, something quiet. Something that had been slowly destroying the people closest to him from the inside out. And what was really behind it was something nobody saw coming. To understand just how shocking this moment was, you have to understand who Chuck Norris actually became, because nothing about where he started suggested where he would end up. He was born Carlos Ray Norris on March 10, 1940 in Ryan, Oklahoma, a small town, a difficult childhood. His father was an alcoholic who eventually walked out and left the family behind. There was no money, no connections, no safety net, just a quiet boy trying to figure out how to survive in a world that didn't seem to care whether he made it or not. But Chuck carried something inside him that couldn't be seen from the outside, a drive so deep it bordered on obsession. After enlisting in the Air Force and being stationed in South Korea, he discovered martial arts. And that discovery didn't just change his hobby, it changed everything. He trained every single day with an intensity that made other fighters uncomfortable. He earned black belts. He became a 6-time world professional middleweight karate champion. 6 years in a row without losing. When he returned to the United States, he opened martial arts schools. One of his students happened to be Steve McQueen. And through that connection, Hollywood came calling. His early films were modest, but then came Missing in Action, then Code of Silence. And then the role that truly cemented his place in American culture, Walker, Texas Ranger. For nearly a decade, Walker was appointment television. Millions of fans tuned in every week to watch the man who never lost, never panicked, and never showed weakness. Chuck Norris became the living definition of the strong, silent, unbreakable American hero. Off-screen, he was just as disciplined, deeply religious, intensely private. He remarried in 1998 to Gina O'Kelly, a former model and devoted mother. They became inseparable. He quietly stepped back from mainstream Hollywood to focus on family, and the world assumed everything was perfect. But behind that carefully maintained image, something was silently going wrong. No one knew it yet, not the fans, not the media, and for a long time, not even the doctors. For years, Gina had been suffering, not publicly, not loudly, but deeply and daily in ways that were impossible to ignore behind closed doors. She was experiencing burning sensations throughout her body, relentless joint pain, a crushing fatigue that no amount of rest seemed to fix. She had seen doctor after doctor, gone through test after test, and kept walking away without real answers. Then came the diagnosis that changed everything. The injections she had been receiving as part of her rheumatoid arthritis treatment, specifically a gadolinium-based contrast agent used in MRI scans, were allegedly leaving toxic deposits inside her body, a condition that wasn't widely recognized, a condition the FDA hadn't issued strong warnings about, a condition that thousands of patients were suffering through in silence, with no name, no explanation, and no end in sight. And Chuck Norris watched all of it happen. He sat beside her through the worst nights. He managed her medications. He drove her to appointments. He held her hand in hospital rooms that smelled like antiseptic and fear. The man who had spent decades portraying invincibility on screen was now learning what real helplessness looked like, and it was nothing like the movies. He became her full-time caregiver, quietly, without asking for credit or attention. But what happened next changed everything, because the battle that was supposed to be Gina's was about to become Chuck's too. And not in any way that anyone could have predicted. The years of caregiving wore on him in ways that the world couldn't see. Chuck Norris was in his mid-70s and sustained emotional stress, the kind that comes from watching someone you love deteriorate day after day. Doesn't care how strong you are. It doesn't respect your reputation. It doesn't check your filmography before it starts breaking you down. His own health began to quietly decline. He disappeared from public life. The man who had always commanded attention was suddenly nowhere. Fans noticed, journalists started asking questions, and then Gina spoke. In a raw, emotional interview that stopped people mid-scroll, she described exactly what their life had become. The sleepless nights, the fear, the uncertainty. And then the number that stunned everyone who heard it. Close to $1 million spent out of pocket trying to treat her condition. She looked directly into the camera and said, "I almost lost my husband. Not his career, not his reputation, her husband." She explained that Chuck had been under such severe physical and emotional strain that his body had started showing serious warning signs. He had been hospitalized. His kidney function was being closely monitored. The pressure had quietly pushed him to a point that frightened people around him. And that's when things took a shocking turn, because the internet didn't wait for facts. Within hours, false stories began flooding social media. Headlines claiming Chuck Norris was on the brink of death, then worse ones claiming he was already gone. A viral hoax spread faster than any correction could catch it, and for a brief, terrifying moment, millions of people around the world believed the legend was lost. His representatives scrambled. His team issued corrections, but the damage was already spreading and the rumor refused to die. The false death reports were just the beginning. Websites built on lies and clickbait had been weaponizing his name for years. Chuck Norris dead at 76. Chuck Norris passes away after secret health battle. These stories appeared in cycles, got debunked, then resurfaced months later with slightly different headlines and new, fabricated details. It was relentless and it was cruel. Because behind every one of those fake headlines, there was a real couple sitting in a real hospital room, fighting a very real battle that had nothing to do with movies or memes. Gina eventually took the fight public in a different way. She filed a lawsuit against the pharmaceutical companies responsible for the MRI contrast agents she believed had poisoned her body. The case wasn't quiet, it wasn't small. It became one of the most high-profile gadolinium-related lawsuits in the United States, and it gave a name and a voice to thousands of patients who had been suffering without either. Chuck stood beside her through all of it. He appeared with her in public, visibly older, visibly tired, moving more carefully than the world was used to seeing. But his eyes hadn't changed. That same intensity, that same quiet, burning determination, he had just changed what he was fighting for. And the truth behind all of this was far more surprising than any rumor, because this wasn't a story about Hollywood decline. It wasn't about scandal or failure or a carefully constructed image falling apart. This was a love story. A brutal, exhausting, unglamorous love story about a man who walked away from everything the world admired him for to be present for one person. No cameras, no applause, no crowd cheering him on. Just devotion, quiet and relentless. As the years passed, more of the truth came into the light. The lawsuit pushed conversations that the medical community had been slow to have. The FDA revisited its position on gadolinium contrast agents. Awareness campaigns gained momentum. Patients who had spent years being dismissed by doctors finally had language for what was happening inside their bodies. Chuck used what remained of his cultural platform to push those conversations forward. He spoke out. He supported the legal fight. He showed up when it would have been far easier to stay silent and let someone else carry it. And still the hoaxes came. Every few months, another wave of false reports, another viral headline. Another round of fans panicking before the facts could catch up. Each time he addressed it, sometimes with measured statements. Sometimes with the kind of quiet humor that reminded the world the man wasn't gone. He was still there, still standing, but behind the humor was something heavier. Two people whose lives had been permanently altered. A body of work that had brought joy to millions, now overshadowed in their private world by medical bills, courtrooms, and the kind of exhaustion that doesn't photograph well. His career had moved into the background, and for a man who had never seemed intoxicated by fame in the first place, that part, at least, seemed like something he could live with. Today, Chuck Norris is in his mid-80s, and by every account that matters, he is still here. He makes occasional public appearances. He posts on social media. He stands beside Gina, who fought one of the most painful and invisible battles a person can fight and came out the other side still fighting. Their story changed something real. Thousands of patients found validation in Gina's courage. Medical conversations shifted, regulatory pressure increased. Something actually moved because two people refused to stay quiet about what had been done to them. The fake death stories never fully stopped. They probably never will. That is the strange and hollow price of becoming a cultural legend. Your name stops fully belonging to you, but Chuck Norris outlasted every single one of those headlines. He outlasted the rumors, the hoaxes, the jokes, and the world's quiet assumption that the story was already over. The real Chuck Norris was never the man throwing kicks on screen. He was the man sitting beside his wife in a hospital room at 2 in the morning, choosing to stay, choosing to fight, long after the cameras stopped rolling and the applause faded away. And honestly, that version of him is far more powerful than any legend the internet ever invented. So what do you think? Did the media go too far with how they covered Chuck Norris during all of this? Or was there something even bigger that the world missed? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read every single one, and the conversations you start down there are always the best part. And if you believe real stories deserve to be told honestly, subscribe. Every week we go deep behind the headlines on the biggest names in Hollywood, the struggles, the secrets, and the truths that actually matter. Because every legend has a human being behind it. And that human being always has a story worth knowing.